Hi, so I just got back from a week of recording with my ensemble load bang and doing some work around New York. And when I got back, there was a nice little surprise on my front doorstep. This is the new EON mouthpiece line from Long Island Brass. And I'm going to take it out and play some of my first notes on it for you. I was able to take it out when I got home and I brought it here. And now I'm going to play my first notes. So, ta-da! Long Island Brass EON mouthpiece. First thing to notice is it has this V taper. It looks a lot like a Limburg mouthpiece, like a Con Limburg mouthpiece, more than it looks like the what my students affectionately call the spaceship model of like the 550E or the Sasha Romero line of mouthpieces that Long Island Brass is a little bit more famous from. Let's see what these differences make and kind of compare it to Limburg mouthpiece and see what we find. These will be just about my first notes on this, so we're just going to run into it blind and see what happens. Okay, so first impressions. Very clear, very brilliant, very direct sound. This kind of has a lot of sparkle, a lot of like brilliance to it. Um, Let me try the same thing out on my usual mouthpiece, the 550E. This is technically a euphonium mouthpiece from Long Island Brass, but I've been finding that deep mouthpieces are really responsive for me and a few of my other students as well. So I like using this on trombone. Very interesting. This feels like it has a little bit more depth of sound, a little bit more body of sound, which is something I look for in my playing. Um, but funnily enough, the high register and some of the low notes felt like they locked in super quickly on this mouthpiece. Let me try the opening to the Weber and see what this feels like. Okay, so it is very responsive. The notes just kind of jump out of the hall and jump out of the horn. And what it makes me wonder is what it would sound like in a bigger hall. Let me try the same thing on my 550E, and then maybe I'll try the same thing on a Limburg 4CL just for comparison. Okay. More sound, a little bit easier connections for this, but a little bit more grip, a little bit more bite and brilliance on the EON mouthpiece. For fun, let me compare that to my other super V-shaped mouthpiece, the CL4 from Christian Limburg and Con. terms of the CL4 mouthpiece, some things about this feel very good. When I'm able to fully fund it with air, it just feels like it really goes where you want it to go. When I feel like I want to play quieter, it feels a little insubstantial, and it feels like it doesn't want to center or not have air in the sound. Let me compare that to the EON mouthpiece again at that quieter dynamic. I feel much more centered and stable at the quietest of dynamics with this, and it feels much more secure. But it does feel like it jumps a little bit from partial to partial. Let me play my 550E and see that same thing at that dynamic. Yeah, that feels the most vocal to me from my impressions behind the bell. But this has some very nice things going for it. I think if you're naturally a player that uses wider, slower, warmer air concepts like that, this mouthpiece could be very great for balancing those out. Let me try the opening to the David with this and see what that feels like on the EON and the 550E. So interesting with that is that there were sometimes when the notes felt like it didn't want to speak the same way as what I'm used to, and it felt like the difference in timbre between loud and soft was almost impressively even, but I don't know if it was what I was looking for switching the character. But there's some really nice things about that. I can't wait to listen back. Let me try the same thing on my standard mouthpiece. Alright, so I did feel a little bit more warmth, a little bit more roundness in this sound, but maybe a touch more projection and brilliance on this. To kind of test out that brilliant character, let's see what a couple of phrases of Gazza Ladra feel like, that kind of noble Italian opera sound. Okay, so a couple of notes weren't speaking the way I'm used to, and it feels like it has a slightly tighter slot to it. It's a little bit, if your buzz isn't dead on, it feels slightly less forgiving, which means maybe I should just do a little more buzz work or something. Let me try the same thing on my 550E. Anyway, intonation aside, this feels a little bit more forgiving to my face, and it might have something to do with the rim sizes. I'm noticing that this is a very sharp rim. Normally Long Island brass mouthpieces are a little bit more rounded. And you can even see a visual size difference in the size of those rims. This is much more rounded and sloping in, and this is much more conventionally like ridged in a lot of ways. So it feels like it really sits on the face a little tighter. The lightness of this mouthpiece by comparison, this feels significantly lighter than the 550E. I feel like it takes a little bit more out of me as I'm playing through. And I'm going to try Bolero out on both mouthpieces to see what that feels like. Yeah, I had to remind myself to take much deeper breaths, and it kind of took a little bit more muscle on the face to stay to have the same feeling of being locked in on those higher notes. Let me try the same thing on my 550E as a comparison. All right, starting to get some ideas here. So playing this, my normal mouthpiece felt slightly almost muffled was the first word that came to mind. But I don't think that's quite the right feel. Just the roundedness of it, the depth of it, it just has a richer tone. And the sharpness of the rim here and the lightness of the mouthpiece let me kind of access the brilliance of like the Bolero characteristic just a little bit tougher. I found when I switched back to the 550E, it felt a little foreign for a second. Like it was like, what am I doing with Bolero? Let's try out one more excerpt. Something kind of big and in the middle register. Da-da-da-dum. Tannhauser. Let's go with that. I forgot the notes for Tannhauser. Anyway, it's kind of funny that a couple notes didn't speak right away, and it felt like they almost like they needed something more to give to make them happen. Other than forgetting the notes to Tannhauser, let me just play a little bit of that same thing on the 550E for a comparison. I think that's where I forgot, so I feel a little like I don't know what I'm doing right at that point. This felt so much more like each note really wanted to come out of the horn in a nice rounded fashion. But I don't think that means that this mouthpiece does anything wrong. It's just a massively different feel from what I'm used to. Last thing I'd like to test this on is like some, double tongue, triple tongue patterns and stuff like that. My gut tells me this would be a fun mouthpiece for like Czardas or something like that. So let's see what a little bit of that feels like. Okay, just a touch of Czardas. That's more of what like most people need anyway. Now on the 550E. Yeah, I felt like I'm getting more note per note out of it. But it'll be really fun to listen back and see if my feeling behind the bell kind of supports that. And finally, just a touch of Fratres, the triple tongue thing that I do. Yep, so it feels like the air just kind of gets sucked out of me, but it feels like the articulations are very clean if I don't have the same amount of sound behind them that I'm used to. Here's the 550E. Yeah, this definitely feels like it has more length behind it, but that's what I'm used to. So, EON mouthpiece from Long Island Brass. I think this is a really well-made mouthpiece and a good addition to the lineup. It's even clearer than the Romero mouthpiece, at the expense of maybe a touch of length of sound. But if you're a player that plays naturally with a lot of length and a lot of warmth in their sound, this could be a wonderful mouthpiece for really playing principle on a lot of things and really having crisp articulations. For me, articulations have been kind of a thing I could do, so going for the sound, like balancing it the other way completely to the 550E has been my mouthpiece of choice. But I could see having the EON, the Sasha Romero line, and the 550E, the euphonium line, has kind of like two different poles with the SR being in the middle of the sound. Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a good mouthpiece. All right, that's my review. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I look forward to exploring more about this mouthpiece in the future. Thanks for watching.